In fact, when we consider that there are 2 million neurons in the two kidneys, we can calculate that the total length of all the tubules is about 40 miles. The tubule of the neuron is intimately surrounded by a network of blood capillaries through which courses the blood left over after filtration in the renal corpuscle. In other words, the small stream of blood which serves the renal corpuscle and which loses most of its content by filtration through this part of the neuron receives back by reabsorption in the tubules much of what is lost before it leaves the vicinity of the neuron. The cells which line the tubules have the remarkable capacity to recover from the glomerular filtrate the molecules of the substances that are needed by the body. The process by which some of the substances in the glomerular filtrate are recovered is an active process which consumes cellular energy. It would seem that the tubule cells virtually pull the molecules to be salvaged out of the stream of glomerular filtrate and deliver them to the blood passing by on the other side of the cells. The substances reabsorbed in the tubules include most of the water, all of the glucose, unless the concentration of glucose in the blood plasma is already too high. The carbonates, the sodium, the chloride, the potassium, most of the phosphate, most of the calcium, and a small part of the sulfate. Also, a portion of the urea, the body's principal nitrogenous waste product, is reabsorbed here. The exact amount of water reabsorbed from the tubule depends on whether the tissues of the body already have a surplus. If the individual has been drinking an abundance of water and if too much has not been lost by the skin through perspiration, then a generous excess of water is allowed to carry on into the kidney, pelvis, and the bladder, and the urine is copious and dilute. If, however, there is a relative shortage of water throughout the body, then a smaller volume of water continues into the kidney, pelvis, and bladder, and the urine is consequently more concentrated. With respect to the glucose, blood sugar, the proportion reabsorbed from the tubule of the neuron depends on how much is already contained in the blood plasma. If the individual has diabetes mellitus with a consequent high concentration of glucose in the blood, a considerable amount of glucose will be permitted to pass on through the tubule and into the urine. If the amount of glucose in the blood is within reasonable limits, however, all of the glucose in the glomerular filtrate will be reabsorbed and returned to the blood. We may question why any of the urea, which is actually a waste product, is reabsorbed from the tubule. The amount reabsorbed depends on whether or not an adequate amount of the water has been taken into the body. When a person has been drinking enough water to make the urine relatively dilute, a higher percentage of the urea passes through the neuron to be eliminated by the way of the urine. When water is in short supply, however, the provision for eliminating urea does not operate as efficiently as it should, and considerable urea is reabsorbed. That which is reabsorbed continues to circulate in the blood until, on some other trip through the kidney, there is opportunity for it to be eliminated by way of the urine. Another substance, if we may call it that, eliminated by way of the urine is hydrogen ions. The balance between acidity and alkalinity in the body's fluids is governed largely by the proportion of hydrogen ions present. Thus, the kidneys perform a function in maintaining the proper acid-base balance in the body, as they eliminate the appropriate amount of hydrogen ion by way of the urine. Also, in this connection, certain of the cells lining the kidney tubules have the ability to produce and eliminate ammonia, which also has its influence on the acid-base balance of the body. Now that we understand that the urine consists of what is left over after the tubules of the kidneys neurons have been kidneys neurons have recovered the substances for which the body has needs, we will recognize that certain valuable information can be obtained from a laboratory examination of the urine. For instance, glucose in the urine indicates that the concentration of this substance in the blood is too high, as in diabetes mellitus. Protein in the urine indicates that the kidneys are damaged by disease or poisoning to the extent that the large protein molecules are escaping from the capillary tuft within the renal corpuscle, when certain substances which should normally be reabsorbed in the tubules appear in the urine. This may suggest that a possible fault in the body's use of this particular substance and may furnish a clue to the physician, aiding him to detect the disease from which the patient is suffering. It is fortunate that the body was designed with two kidneys rather than one. When when injury or disease affects only one kidney, the remaining one has sufficient capacity to care for the body's needs. A person can maintain perfectly good health even after one kidney has been removed, provided the remaining kidney is normal. In some acute conditions of illness, as in some cases of poisoning, the kidney becomes temporarily unable to carry on their usual functions. Without medical help, the individual would die from the accumulation of waste products and toxic substances. It is in such cases that an artificial kidney may save life. By running the patient's blood through a very complicated apparatus designed especially for this purpose and then returning it to the patient after the undesirable substances are being removed, his natural kidneys are given a chance to heal. A simpler method of reducing the workload of diseased kidneys is the use of peritoneal dialysis, in which a renting fluid is injected into the peritoneal cavity and allowed to remain there for 30 to 60 minutes while it dissolves some of the toxic substances that have accumulated in the blood. One of the marvels of modern surgery is the development of a method of transplanting a kidney from one person to another. At the time of this writing, there are yet many problems to be solved before a person can tolerate this transplanted tissue for long periods of time. Once the problems are solved, it is expected that the life of a person with kidney disease can be prolonged by transferring to him a healthy kidney taken from a person who has just died from some disease which did not involve the kidneys. The secret of avoiding disease is the same as that of avoiding disease in general. Keep the body in good general health and maintain a high level of physical fitness. More specifically, the following: drink an adequate amount of water each day, provide immunity against the common contagious diseases, be consistent in getting a reasonable amount of daily exercise, and develop a wholesome mental attitude with faith and confidence. The body's waste disposal system, you and your health.